Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Lounge radio show, where we expose the myths of entrepreneurship and release the weight of it all. Real people, real issues, and real talk with expert solutions. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show as we welcome our host, Alicia Brown, the Joy Guru.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Entrepreneur's Lounge radio show. I am your host, Alicia Brown, the Joy Guru, and tonight's show is designed to help you write for impact and profit. Now, one of the things as a publisher and author's consultant that I can tell you is I often tell my clients that you will never get rich off of just a book. You know, there are statistics that says there are roughly 300,000 new titles published each year. But the average author only sells a few hundred books in his or her lifetime. Now, the smart ones will go far above and beyond, and that's why I love working with authors. So our next two shows are going to be devoted to these featured experts that will share with you what they're doing to stand out and use their books and platform to garner the type of national and international media attention and spotlight. And I will tell you, our next guest is just downright funny, but she is doing some things that are a little bit different from your everyday author, so I definitely cannot wait to introduce you to her tonight. But before I do that, I just want to remind you that anyone that's listening to us via the internet, you can always call in 1-949-534-0604 and press 1 to be live on air. Because I'm pretty sure tonight you're going to have some questions, and we want to make sure those are answered along the way. And I'm also going to warn you to go ahead and take some notes, get your papers and pens ready, because you're going to hear some strategies that are really key if you want to monetize your author's platform. So I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with tonight's guest for several years. She has vast expertise, which you're going to hear, and she also has some creative ways that she steps out in the forefront and gets the type of publicity, which is really amazing. Author Carol G. of the Venus Chronicles fame is a retired Air Force veteran and tenured former educator. She's an author, columnist, and motivational speaker. She encourages girls, women, and men to celebrate and embrace their thoughts, their feelings, the silly things they do, and yes, their very humanity. Now, her writings have appeared in several different columns and magazines, such as Diabetes Forecast, Woman's World Magazine, and in February 2017, she also was in the issue of Essence Magazine. She also even has some contributions in one of the Chicken of the Soup series that's dedicated to military families. Now, Carol G. and her husband of, I believe, 46 years live in an Atlanta suburb. So what I'd like you to do at this time is put your hands together and help me welcome tonight's guest, author Carol G. Hey, Miss Carol G., how are you doing this evening?
I am great, Alicia, and I'm feeling excited. I'm excited to be on your show, and I want to thank you for hosting me.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I am so excited but also relaxed. For the listeners, I was joking with her earlier that, you know, I stopped by the ABC store, which is near my home, right before the show, and I just got some special libations for tonight's episode. So I'm going to sit back and be very relaxed, and as you will probably see in the next few minutes, we're going to be laughing the whole entire evening, although you're going to learn a lot about how to monetize your brand. So I definitely shared with him a few things from your bio, but what I want you to do is really tell us who author Carol G. is. What is it that you feel like you were put on this earth to do?
Well, I guess people might say that I am a really funny person. Usually when I talk to people and I say something, they'll say, oh, you're so funny. A lot of times, unfortunately,
Yes.
A lot of times the things I say aren't meant to be funny, but people laugh anyway.
Yes, as they will soon hear.
But I would say my mission in life, or my purpose in life, is to entertain, educate, and empower others in some way through my writings. As I've gotten older, Alicia, I used to take things really, really serious, stuff that happened to me. If I tripped going up the steps and broke the heel off my shoe, I'd probably be boo-hooing forever. Now, things that happen to me, I figure if nobody died, especially me, then it's all good. So I hope that a lot of the things that I write, even in my books and my articles, will motivate others not to take things or themselves so seriously. And most importantly, I hope that a lot of the things that I write will make them laugh.
Yes, because, one of the things I really want to, and people will hear it throughout the theme of the show, but, one of the things about it, being an entrepreneur is very hard. Being a successful entrepreneur is even harder. So there's a lot of things so there's a lot of things that's going to happen. Life in general, there's a lot of things that happen. And if we're always taking things so seriously, not only is it stressful, but it's almost self-defeating.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
So you guys heard that she likes to point out the comedy in things. So one of the things I want you to share with our listeners is this story about you and an unfortunate incident with a scarf.
Well, in my book, Random Notes, which is my current girlfriend book, there's a piece. All my books are essay-driven. I take in mind the busy men like myself, who probably don't have a lot of time to read, so they can read a little 600-700-word essay and be motivated or informed or be just simply tickled. So I love scarves. In fact, I adore scarves. I love how they look and how they accent your clothes. But unfortunately, scarves don't like me, which has been exhibited several times when they've tried to kill me. So in my book, Random Notes, I share the story. It's called What's a Diva to Do When a Scarf Tries to Kill Her. Well,
wow.
What happens is, several times when I've put on a scarf that I thought looked great, and of course it never looks like any of the scarves worn on other people, but a sister does the best that she can. Well, I put on a scarf, and one time I put on a scarf that was quite pretty, and everybody at work admired how pretty it was. Well, that morning they didn't know that as I got out of my car to go to work, my scarf got caught in my seatbelt. Also, they didn't know that another time I wore a scarf, and I was sitting at my desk, and I reached in to get a pen and somehow closed my scarf up in the drawer. So when I got up to stand up, it started to choke me. Of course, my eyes watered, and one of my false eyelashes started to fall off. Another time, my beautiful fashion scarf got tipped into some soup. So as you can see, my scarves are not friendly. I don't know why.
Out of curiosity, do you still wear scarves?
Yes.
Oh wow!
I'm a glutton for punishment.
Okay.
In fact, it was funny. I even got a scarf book one time to kind of teach myself how to wear scarves a certain way. Well, unfortunately, the instructions gave me pause. So I'm destined to wear a scarf that's maybe not pretty, but just kind of folded over, kind of looped over. I may add a pretty pin to it, and I just keep on stepping with my head held high.
Okay, and I think, most people can relate to that because we either, even in this YouTube generation, you believe you can do anything with the right video and they show you how simple it is, but when you go to do it, it just doesn't turn out that way. So,
unfortunately, that is the case.
Yeah, so we pick our battles and we keep it moving.
We certainly do.
And I want to tell listeners, I'll just give them a little tidbit, because actually, if you go to VenusChronicles.net, under her blog post, you can see some of these stories. She shared excerpts from you or with you from Random Notes. But there is something that just makes you crack up. So we'll give you the links at the end of the show and she'll tell you how to communicate with her. And she is published on Amazon with all her books. But in Random Notes, or if you have already purchased Gilded Pearls, on Random Notes, I believe it's around page 118. On Gilded Pearls, I think it's around page 77. There is something in her book that talks about an addiction that she discovered her husband had soon after they got married. And I'm going to tell you, you would not believe me until you read the book, that the addiction he has, you think of all the types of things. I can tell you it's shocking, and you're not going to think it's the addiction. It's not the one you're probably envisioning. But, the story's hilarious, how she tried to satisfy it. When you find out what it is, you're not going to believe it. But then when she goes into the story of what she did to try to satisfy it and all the hilarious things that happen, you're just going to die. It's hilarious. So the book is entitled Random Notes About Life Stuff and Family Learning to Exhale. And if you don't learn how to exhale after you read that, there is nothing that anyone can do for you. But the irony I want to share with our listeners is that as much as you're funny, as much as you enjoy sharing that laughter and inspiring your readers to laugh and giving them that request, it was actually something you read in a book that someone left in the break room of your former job, which changed your writing perspective and actually encouraged you to write using your humor and wit. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, it was one day I was on a break from my job, taking a little few minutes break, drinking some coffee, and I looked over on a table and I saw somebody had left the late Irma Bombeck's book, If Life is a Bowl of Cherries, Why Am I Standing Here in the Pits? For some reason, that book spoke to me. I loved how she used humor to discuss her day-to-day life. If you're not familiar with the late Irma Bombeck, she was a humorist and a newspaper person who wrote columns and books from the 1960s through the 1990s. If you ever get a chance and want something that's truly funny besides my book, pick up some of her books. I had often used humor as a child to diffuse tense situations. I'd also used it as a girl to kind of combat bullies who bullied me about my long hair, bullied me about being the teacher's pet because my mother did not tolerate fools when it came to education. So you might say that Irma gave me permission to use that in my own writings.
Wow. So it was something you read. And I pointed that out because a lot of times, people, especially when you think about businesses, it's like, okay, I want to be known for this. I have someone that I'm looking at, and I want the success they have. So they try to mimic and they try to model themselves after them instead of tapping into what their gifts are, not saying you can't have the same success or strive for it, but there's some unique characteristics you have, and it's necessary. I was going to say it's okay, but actually it's necessary to go outside of the box and do those things to make yourself stand out.
Yes, and that's what I've done.
Exactly. And often I'll say it's the things in our childhood or our upbringing. Sometimes it's your manners or social graces, things we're taught early on that actually hold us back. And I want to ask you about that as well. You were actually discouraged from pursuing your writing aspirations, I would assume innocently, because you were encouraged to pursue another career path.
Yes. When I was growing up, I always wrote. As a small girl, I made up little short stories to help my younger sister to read and also to write, because we used to go to the library. I guess I got my first library card when I was probably 7 years old, and she got hers probably around the same time. But for some reason, she really enjoyed the little stories that I made up out of my head and wrote them down and shared them with her. And so everybody, I think that I knew I shared this dream. Kids don't. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a writer. Well, the women in my village, and these were my teachers and my Sunday school teachers, and other women that came to my mother's beauty shop. My mom did hair for over 40 years. So my sister and I would go on Saturdays to the beauty shop and help her out. We'd run errands for the customers and stuff like that. And so I would tell them that I wanted to be a writer, and they would say, well, I don't know about that. I think you would really make a great teacher. First of all, you speak so well, some said, and you have such a way with words, others said. Back then, few people knew many African-American writers who were making a living. However, they knew a lot of teachers. Back in the day, I don't know if it's so much so today as it is, but teachers were revered. You probably can remember yourself, Alicia, seeing somebody said, "Oh, there's so-and-so. She's a teacher." And their voice held such reverence. So these people thought that I could probably make a better living as a teacher than I could as a writer. However, the idea of writing never, ever left me. I remember as a young girl dabbling into little short stories. I did a couple of little animal stories that someday I hope to find out of the mothballs and dust them off and submit them somewhere. I wrote poems to kind of resolve some of the angst I had while dating and trying to find Mr. Right. But it's funny, as life as so often happens, I ended up being an educator, and that also included teaching. So you just never know.
And that's so true. And, you know, I think that's a testament. I definitely want our listeners to hear that story, a testament of how if it's meant to be, if it's your gift, if it's something that's in you, it won't leave you.
Yes.
It won't leave you. So, you know, it will be a time. Yes, it will be a time where it will come to pass for you to do exactly that thing that keeps burning away at you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we've heard about the stars. We've heard about the teaching aspirations. And, of course, this is the part for everyone listening. I want you to share how you go from just writing books to actually having the wife of one of the Tuskegee Airmen be one of your biggest fans.
Well, I was introduced to her by another woman who was my friend and mentor. This individual has been with me since day one, since the debut of the Venus Chronicles. Incidentally, for people out there listening, the Venus Chronicles was my spoof on the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And so this individual, who is today at 92 years young, she always tells people that she's a member of my posse because she's been around since the very beginning of my books. She is a retired social worker, also from Virginia, like myself. I think she was raised in Richmond. And as I think I mentioned to you, Alicia, my people still live in Farmville. And anyway, during her lifetime, she married the late Lieutenant Colonel Charles W. Dryden, one of the few remaining Tuskegee Airmen. And these two were so cute and were living together until his passing sometime in 2008. Lots of women tell me they have favorites in each of my books. Hers was a piece that I wrote in the Venus Chronicles called Vaseline. For some reason, whenever I see her and there are other people, she'll say, you know, she's a writer. And I don't know if you read her book, but she's got this one in there called Vaseline. In it, I shared where when I was growing up, my mother Vaselined me from head to toe to rebuff ash. She put it on my face. Yes. She put it on my lips. Put it on my arms. Put it on my legs. I always thought that if somebody tried to kidnap me, it wouldn't work because I'd slide right out of their hands.
Yes, ma'am. Oh my goodness.
She also loved the piece in my second book, Diary of a Fly Girl Wannabe, about satin sheets. My fantasy, and I have so many fantasies. Anyway, one of my fantasies was to sleep on a set of satin sheets. So my fantasy became reality the year my husband and I came back from living 3 years in Okinawa, Japan. And we stopped in San Francisco to hang out with a young man who was in my squadron. I supervised him, and we became friends. Well, his girlfriend put on a brand-new set of red satin sheets on our bed. I'm like, oh-ho, the fun is about to begin. All right. Well, let me just tell you something. When my husband and I started to get busy, it was not like my fantasy. First of all, when I tried to reach out and hug him, I accidentally elbowed him in the ribs. Our lovemaking turned out to be more like kung fu fighting.
Oh, Lord. Well, you are the woman with the killer scarf, so how could we expect anything
less?
But
I'm telling you.
Exactly. Like that's why you have to be careful with fantasy books because, they paint it a different way, but that's not what they expect to happen. Wow.
Exactly.
Okay.
And however, when it comes to popping up on various platforms and brands, as a featured expert, one of the main sources that have been wonderful for me is a freelance site called Harrow, Haro, Harrow. It stands for Help a Reporter Out. One of the goals of it is if there are reporters who are doing a story. And I signed up for this probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and I believe it was free, and I hope it's free too. But those that are interested can go to the Harrow site, Haro site, and look up the information and sign on. And like I said, what happens is three times a day, a reporter will send a bunch of emails. They're kind of divided into sections, sort of like living. One might be health. And they will send out notices for the stories that they're working on. So and I scroll down and say, for example, they're doing a story on how to be on a radio talk show. And after this show, I'm probably going to be an expert. So anyway, I will write a pitch on my thoughts on how to get on a radio show and what that's like. And if they like my pitch, they will reach out to me for either more questions, a clarification. Sometimes I often have conference calls to get more clarification. And if they use my post or my quote or my anecdote, they'll send me the link once it's published. Now, while it does not pay, it is a great promotion for my books because most of them are happy to link to my website. And, for example, if there's a topic that I think talk about saving money, I might mention my book, Gilded Pearls. And so they'll do a link out or mention the name of the book. So it's great promotion for my book. So, and in turn, I get to become an expert in different subjects, and a lot of people learn about my books.
Wow. So would you say that's one of the strategies that you use in combination with some of the paid things that do in order to get – okay. So for those of you that are listening – no, go ahead.
No. I was going to say when it comes to getting paid, I do lots of other different things. So I have a whole arsenal of ways to get noticed and be recognized and also to make money.
Yes. And I was going to say for those taking notes, I want them to hear that. Because, a lot of times that's another thing about entrepreneurship, and I try to talk to my clients about that. A lot of times people will say that you need to do free things to get exposure. And sometimes I'm like, yes, and no. But either way, you have to make sure that whatever you're doing makes sense and it's part of a whole system. So we can't do everything for free. But what we do for free has to give us the type of attention that it makes sense. And like you said with that key tip, that's branding you as an expert because a lot of times you're featured by the reporter for different platforms.
Exactly.
And can you share some of those that some of the awesome opportunities that have come from that?
Sure. Well, for as far as when they're getting paid, I want to talk a little bit about that. When it comes to the getting paid, I often check. There are a number of freelance sites. There are a lot of freelance sites for just general writing. There are just some for that short stories, if that's your thing. There's some for there's something called flash fiction now. They're often little 500 to 900 word stories. It might be a 500-word story or a 900-word story. But one of the sources that has been great for me to make money is called Funds for Writers. It's www.funds for writers. It is a site that's vetted by another writer of mysteries. And once you sign up, every week every Friday or Saturday, she will send to your email a letter that highlights contests, markets, and even agents seeking writers. Also, I'm an avid
what site
reader.
is that?
It's called Funds for Writers.
Funds for Writers. We're putting all of
C. Hope Clark is the author of this newsletter, C. Hope Clark, Funds for Writers. And it's a weekly newsletter that has wonderful markets, like I said, opportunities for contests, for flash fiction, for short stories. And these are opportunities that pay money.
Oh.
And then I am an avid reader as well as writer, and so I used to just read books and magazines just for the enjoyment of it. Now I still do that, but I look for opportunities to contribute. For example, most of you, or many of you, are familiar with Woman's World magazine. That's a little grocery store magazine. You're always at the checkout counter. The last year, I probably sold about 8 or 9 pieces. And for someone who, say, want to make some quick money, for a mere 78 words, I can earn $50. That's quite a bit for 78 words.
Right.
And their contributions can run from your contributions that you write for the magazines can run anywhere, I believe, from $50 to up to $250. The pieces that have that they've accepted from me has been a lot of the $50 pieces on the Circle of Kindness, and unfortunately there's a section called Boy Was My Face Red, which highlights some of the crazy stuff that highlights some of the crazy stuff that I do. But at least I get paid for it, so there. And
see, that's true.
There's also a market for, I guess, I don't want to call it affliction, but a market for things if you've got something health going on. I am a diabetic, as you mentioned at the intro that I've written for Diabetes Forecast. That is true. I also wrote a piece for Living with Diabetes. And one of the things I do is try to contribute to magazines for lessons learned. But diabetes runs in my family. And so I always kind of figured that I would probably get it. But getting it was very frightening to me because I saw how it affected my loved ones. And so when I was diagnosed, it was quite frightening. However, once I had a great endocrinologist, modified my diet, cut out my sweets, learned all I could about the disease, then I started to kind of write about it. I wanted to take the fear out of it. So there's several of the pieces that I wrote for those magazines. The doctor said about 10 years ago I suffered a small stroke. I thank God there were no lasting effects from it, but I shared my story of what that felt like there's a stroke website. So there are different kinds of writing opportunities for all kinds of things.
And I'm so glad that you shared that. Because what you're showing and what I want listeners to note is that there's a lot of things that they're overlooking that are ways to get paid.
And maybe not so much overlooking, Alicia, maybe not even being aware of them, because I was not aware of things like that until I experienced my diabetic episode. That later on, as I started to read through it and learn the tips to kind of help me manage it, that I learned there was a magazine for diabetes,
And, and I'm not doing a pitch, but I'm going to do a selfless pitch. That's the benefit of this show. Just say a selfless pitch here. Because, that's why we are very particular. I said this on our social media, Facebook page, but we're very particular of who we invite on the show because the fact is, there's a lot of great people that can talk about different topics, but it's so important that we have featured experts who can give you information that you can walk away right now with something you can take away and implement. So already you've given us a bunch of different things, from unpaid resources to paid resources, that while you're working on your next bestseller, while you're working on this plan, while you're working on this strategy, these are some things right now you can do to actually get paid while you're doing the other things. And that's important.
Yeah. I always tell people, a lot A lot of people come up to me and say, okay, I've written 4 books, as you know. They'll tell me, okay, I've written a book. Now, I know I'm going to be promoting it. Now what do I do? What do I do next to get attention? And obviously, as you know more than I do, there are lots of ways now to get promotion, but there are a lot of out of the box kinds of things that if you use your imagination, you can do. And I think one of our following questions will kind of I'll be able to talk about that. But one of the things I tell people is, okay, you've written a book. Have you considered writing an article highlighting something in your book? I tell them to maybe take one chapter of their book and turn it into an article and then see if they can publish it somewhere. And that improves their promotion and marketability.
See, I love it. And, with social media being so prevalent now, that's one of the things. Are you writing articles on something like LinkedIn where there are professionals who are looking? That's another way. Exactly. You brand yourself as the expert. And then every time you are sharing an article at one of these magazines, of course, and we're giving you some golden nuggets here, listeners, but they're going to want a lot of times something fresh. They don't want something you've written elsewhere. So if you're strategic about it, what you're going to do is write it for them first. When they publish it, you're going to share where it's been published. You're going to share where people can pick it up, but you also can give excerpts from it. You might give them the first paragraph and then say, as seen in, and give them the link to that magazine or give them the link, because a lot of these magazines will post those articles online as well. So if you're doing that on LinkedIn, that, is content that you're giving, and it brands you as an expert, and then people are going to look more into your profile for the services that you offer. So that's golden.
I also wanted to share that. I also wanted to share that you're not limited if you say you write an article. Now, some, depending on where you send it and they publish it, they may tell you can only publish it with them for a year. You have to discover what your rights are. But for an example, I'm a big mentor of young adults since I spent my close to 28 years in higher education. There are several young people who I just absolutely love, and they're like my family to this day. They're adults, but they still consider me their mom figure. Well, one young man, I wrote about our mentoring relationship, and I published in one magazine, and then I turned around and tweaked it a little bit so that it seemed like it was different. I started the intro differently, did the ending differently. Maybe a couple of paragraphs in the middle were a little different from the original. So I tweaked it and sold it to another magazine, and I turned around and did it a third time. So the whole thought of mentoring young people, that whole theme was published in 3 different magazines at the 3 different times.
Now you see why she's on the show. Because that's another trick. And I remember teaching this in a workshop, I want to say it was last year, that same thing you just said. Because people are like, well, now this is something new because now I got to write all this content. No, you don't. You just sometimes have to know how to tweak it. You know, you have to know how to tweak it. And it's really, from what you're hearing, it's a strategy. What are you writing for what purpose? If you're going to write, let's say, 5 books a year, what's your plan of action? What's your calendar? What's your accountability to get those books done? What's your time frame? But in the interim, we're a fan of I still need money now. So, those opportunities, like you said, just using Woman's World. Woman's World has various articles you can write. So if this one's 50, if this one's, 75, I mean, yes, you have to write it and submit it to them, but you're a writer. You love to write. So if you take your love and your gift.
And for Women's World, everything is done online. I write my little 78-word piece to whatever column, and then I email it to them, and a few weeks later, maybe they'll email me back, so we love your piece. We're paying you $50, and this issue is when it appears, and look for your check as soon as the article appears. And for a person who is struggling to write and promote their book, if they could write several $50 pieces a month, that's a lot of extra change while they're promoting their other work and continue to write.
And these are the things people are not telling you. And then I'll be honest, some people don't know this. So these listeners, I hope you're understanding these juicy nuggets. I definitely will say for you and your author friends, Make sure you share this episode, you go back and listen, take your notes, and develop a plan of action. And actually, we're going to pause for a quick commercial break, but you're going to want to stay in tune because we will tell you more about author Carol G. We're going to come back and tell you eventually how she landed the Esther magazine contribution, how was she mentioned as part of the Chicken for the Soup Soul, the military edition. So we'll get even more into other monetizing strategies and things she does. But we're going to pause for a quick commercial break, and please make sure you stay tuned to the Entrepreneurs Lounge radio show.
The reason that people don't want to deal with what's holding them back is because it does not feel good to look back. So the easier thing to do is to live in what I call your condition zone. It's not a comfort zone because it doesn't make you comfortable. You're just familiar with it.
Letitia Bates, Certified Life Coach.
So I'm always working with my clients to meet them at their needs. I am listening to where they are. I do have to help them move to that next level, but we're going to go slow, and what they can expect from me is kindness, respect, and compassion.
Go to atthewheelcoaching.com and start driving your life back to higher ground.
What I help you do is understand anything that you've gone through, you've already survived. That's why you're here. And we can work together to deal with those uneasy feelings and help you move forward.
Go now to atthewheelcoaching.com.
Have a great book idea, but clueless as to where to start? Or perhaps you published a book before and your sales were disastrous. Exactly why are you sitting on your vision as well as your wealth? Hi, this is Alicia Brown, the CEO of Fruition Publishing Concierge Services. We're a full publishing firm where our mission is to help you publish your amazing book idea and deliver your message to the masses. So visit us at fruitionpublishing.com to find out how you can connect with us and be our next best-selling author.
And I want to welcome you back to the Entrepreneurs Lounge radio show. This is your host, Alicia Brown, the Joy Guru, and we are actually here with author Carol G. If you have missed about the first half an hour of this episode, you've truly missed out. But one of the things I also want to remind you, if you believe your brand or business should be highlighted on the show, we do have several advertising packages now available to you. You can visit the entrepreneurslounge.info to see those packages and options. And also, if you're interested in being a guest on the show, that information is provided in the links as well. And we always encourage you to follow us on our Facebook page, the Entrepreneurs Lounge Radio Show. And if you've been following us on our Twitter account, we are also posting the links to this information that Carol is telling us. Because if you've missed this first 35 minutes, I cannot even tell you how many ways she's told us how to monetize our gifts as a writer. And this has nothing to even do with your writing a book. But if you are a published author or you're soon to be published, some of the tips that she's giving you will help you market and advertise your book, as well as prove yourself to be an expert while making money in the process outside of whatever sales you produce from your actual book. Now, our featured guest tonight, author Carol G., is the visionary behind the Venus Chronicles fame. She is a retired Air Force veteran, former educator, author, columnist, as well as a motivational speaker. And as we mentioned earlier, her writings have appeared in magazines such as Diabetes Forecast, Woman's World Magazine, as well as the February 2017 issue of Essence Magazine. And she also had a contribution in Chicken Soup for the Soul, the Military Families edition. And then tonight, she's going to tell us how she monetizes her writing and also garner influence while you can take some of these same tips and implement yourself. And, of course, Carol, I'm not going to tell your age, but a lot of people have trouble starting over again or successfully transitioning from one career to the next, especially in the later seasons of their lives. and you've had 2 successful careers at least. You know, after you spent 21 years in the military, you spent probably equal time or longer in higher education at the college and university level, 21 of those at Emory University in Atlanta. So what tips do you have to successfully transition from a career to your long life dreams and passions, or making those another career?
Well, it started, I guess one of the things that I learned was the first 14 years at Emory, I worked in administration. During those times, I published my first and second books. So the last 7 years there, after I had become a writer, I accepted a position as an editor at Emory's Goizueta Business School. There, as an editor, I copy-edited scientific manuscripts and research and wrote business case studies. Frankly, I was surprised that I actually had that skill. And then I guess professors outside of universities and colleges talk to each other. So a professor at another university outside of Emory in Atlanta learned about my researching and writing case studies and contracted me to research and write some for him. This, I realized, could translate into a small business because I did this on my own time at home. And so I think that a lot of people have skills that can be transferable. So what I tell people when they ask me about it is sit down and think about the things that you can do that might be translatable to another career, a second career or third career like mine. Like me, I'm on my 4th career. And I realized that I could translate these ideas into small business and still do what I love, tell a story. Because in essence, case studies are actually stories, and I love a good story. And I think most people love a good story. And business cases typically are actually stories about businesses or product or people in business. One of the professors at Goizueta, whose focus was innovation, asked me to write a story, a case for her on Amazon. I don't know if a lot of people know the backstory of Amazon. Is the founder, Jeff Bezos, started Amazon selling books in his garage. And now we know that we can buy everything from Amazon. And so I took the story from his humble beginnings to a lot of the stuff that he was doing as late as I think it was when I left Emory, 2011. And, of course, we all know a lot more stuff has happened since 2011, so maybe someday she'll ask me to pick up that story. But that's how I turned what I did as a profession into my passion. Most recently, I wrote a case for a retired 3-star general at Emory. One of the professors I worked with thought I would be a good fit for him because obviously we had the military thing in common. This general was on site during the 2010 Haiti earthquake. And so he had to jump into his leadership skills for the humanitarian relief during that time. So we met, and because we had that military connection, he thought I could do a good story, and I did. I'm happy to say I saw one of my former professors in my old department at the clinic last week, and I understand the 2 of them are co-teaching this class in the leadership classes at Emory. So it's sometimes you can find what you started out as your profession and turn it into a brand new profession.
And I love that because, you know, one of the things, regardless of where you are in your career, I know a lot of times there's this thing of I just wish I could do this. You know, I wish I could take my passion, do it 24/7 and leave this job. But people will find that oftentimes along the way, it's things that you're doing in that job that whether it's a connection there or whether it's a skill that you learn, it all comes into play when you do take those full wheels and pursue it.
Exactly.
So, you know, like you said, you need to look down at some of the things that you're doing right now that could lend itself to your career and to your passion and those things that you really want to achieve. So, of course, I know it's the long-awaited part that most of the listeners want to know. You know, we titled tonight's show From the Military to Essence Magazine. And, you know, before I ask you about the Essence Magazine part, you know, I like the cliffhanger. Can you tell us whether, I love doing that. People are like, oh, you're almost there. Yeah, that's me. I can't help it. It's the writer in me. But would you say from your experience of the hustle of being an author and trying to sell your books and trying to be recognized, that maybe it was that military boot camp experience that prepared you to do this?
Yes, I could say yes. It was as you mentioned. I served 21 years in the Air Force. Actually, I served nearly 8 years on active duty, another 14 in the reserves, for a total of a little bit over 21 years. And so I lucked out, so I get to have a pension. Yay! But yes, I believe it was my military experience that happened. One of the things that I tell people is the military changed my whole life's trajectory. It took a scared 20-year-old. I was 20 years old when I entered the military, and it taught her and transferred her into a confident, sheltered. Transferred me from a scared, sheltered young woman into a strong, confident woman, a warrior. As such, nothing frightens me much anymore or deters me. And this self-confidence really came in handy when I first started writing and started receiving the dreaded rejection letters. And I think everybody who's probably written something has gotten one or two rejection letters. And I guess had I not had this motivation of stick-to-itness that came from the Air Force, I may give up and say, let me give up and stick to my day job because I'm never going to be a writer. But the rejection letters forced me to take the same little piece that they rejected, to look it over and tweak it and send it someplace else. And I kept doing that until one day somebody bought something. And let me tell you something. If you have not sold an article, it is a fabulous feeling to see your name in print and then getting a check for it. To this day, I still love seeing my byline, Carol G, on something and getting a check in the mail. So yes, the military helped me. I think really helped me to be who I was meant to be.
Wow. And, definitely, I think anyone who's ever been in the military or known someone in the military, that is the truth. You can say what you want about the military, but there are things like that. It really reshapes the person. There's structure, there's order, and it really changes that young person that goes in and what they come out to be.
Mm-hmm.
And even with that, you were one of the people, as a female, you were in the military at a time where there weren't a lot of female soldiers. Can you tell us, I know in your book you must have some funny things about that in one of the books, but can you tell us how some of those
random notes
were?
And random notes I share, random notes I share a little bit, and I tell people that my life story would not be complete without sharing my military memories. Because, like I said earlier, the military shaped my whole life's trajectory. But to give listeners a sense of what it was like of being one of the earliest females in the military, after basic training and after technical school in Colorado to become an inventory management specialist, which is simply supplies. I went to my first military permanent base. It was in Idaho. I hope there's some Idaho listeners here. It's actually a lovely place, but I don't think I'd ever went to Idaho if I'd not been in the service. Well, when I first got on base, I made the 21st woman to over 200 men.
As a single woman, that sounds good to me.
Well, put it this way. As I write about in Random Notes, I talked about all these colors, shapes, and sizes. They resemble Skittles. However, a sheltered young 20-year-old, I couldn't take advantage of it. I was too scared.
Yeah, so, it has some drawbacks.
Yes. However, out of that came meeting the love of my life, who I've been with forever and ever. Amen. So that experience, I guess happened. And he tells people he heard of me and saw me the very first day on base, which is not just somebody saying, because when I came through the gate in my little cute uniform, there was this cute African-American gate guard, and he must have sounded an alarm that there was a new sister on base, because Alicia, I went to the day room. Back then, the sexes were segregated. Women had a women's dorm, and the men had their dorms according to their field. And I went in, unpacked my little stuff, and went down to the day room and thought I had walked into one of the men's barracks. There were so many men there, and I know I'm pitiful with directions, but geez.
Hello.
But to say that the military did not know what to do with me and women like myself was an understatement. Okay, we were airmen, albeit we were airmen with breath. And since this was such a new thing that was thrust upon them, I really don't think they quite knew what to do. But the good side was I got to set the example of what a proud female airman could be and should be. And so I think in the end that was a great lesson for me.
That in itself is amazing. And like we shared in earlier, she has managed to even take some of those stories to put in random notes and actually make them funny. So you got to get the book. But I'll give people a spoiler. We talked about how you met your husband in the military, but he actually played a pivotal role in your Essence magazine recognition. Can you tell us what the opportunity was and how you landed that?
Yes, it was the results of Harrow, which I mentioned earlier, the Help the Reporter Out website. One day I was perusing these things come over on your email, and like they start at 5:30 in the morning. You get a new notification at 12:30 and another at 5:30 in the evening. So it was in the middle of the day that I pulled up my emails and saw the Harrow invitations were there. And I can scroll down. These little things don't take but a few minutes because it's just a few minutes. You can scroll down and see if there's a subject that where I want to contribute. If it's not, I just delete it. Well, this particular day, a reporter was doing a story on African-American women who actively support their husband's health. And as you know, Alicia, and you and I have shared it, my husband has had some health issues for the past 25 years. But praise God, he's still on his feet and we're still standing. Well, I responded. Now, I did not write the Essence article. I want to make that clear. However, it was my pitch that I wrote that garnered this individual's attention. I wrote about the different episodes of health issues he's had and how I make sure that he goes to doctor's appointments. I keep them in my smartphone. And now that I'm available, I'm not working full-time and work for myself, I have the flexibility to go to the clinics with him. Because, honey, he don't tell the truth when the doctor asks him something. They'll say, Ronnie, how are you feeling? I'm doing great. Well, he just told me back before we left the house he was feeling pitiful, you know. And then a lot of times he does not or cares not to remember all the different health issues he's had. Well, honey, I can tell you every time he's had 2 heart attacks and quadruple bypass. I can tell you the day that happened. So this reporter must have loved our story, and I imagine she had a number of people responded. So she wrote me and said, Carol, I love your story. I'd like to talk with you and ask you more questions. Are you available for a conference call? Which I was, and so she asked more questions. And he and I were 3 of the finalists that made the story. It's called Stand By His Health for people interested in reading it and seeing our little picture. Stand By His Health. It was the February 2017 issue. It's a cover that had the women from Hidden Figures on it, Taraji and those other ladies. There was that magazine. It was a black cover with those ladies on it. And I guess my husband did not realize how important a magazine to Essence was to African American women. And so when I told him, I said, honey, I showed him the article. I said, honey, we made Essence magazine. And my husband doesn't get excited about anything. Well, I get excited and jump all over the place. And he said, well, that's nice, honey. And I said, you have a quote. And he said, what's a quote?
Wow.
And then, so then as I began to tell folks, you know, that we appeared and everybody seemed like they were so excited, then I think he really realized how big a deal that was. Yeah. And so while I didn't write the article, it was my written pitch that got the interest of the reporter. So that's why I said participating in this Harrow thing can open up so many opportunities. I've had so many opportunities through that particular website.
Wow. And again, while people are trying to do different things for free that add up to nothing, you heard the tip that she gave us earlier in the show actually led to them being referenced and pictured in Essence magazine. As an author, that's huge. That's huge. To say that you had anything in Essence magazine is huge. So all of this leads to your credibility and your expertise, and it's just one of the things that you can put together to really brand yourself as an expert and show that you're noteworthy. So when you are trying to sell people those books, that makes you stand out a little more than just your regular average person, because let's be real, people write books every day. So it's something where people have to connect with you. It's something where you have to stand out as special, as different, in order to garner that type of attention and make that sale and make that impression on that prospective reader that you really want to. But one of the things I want to ask, since you shared, with your husband's medical problems and some of the things he's went through, and pretty much you are his caretaker, and you've even shared that you have your own medical problems. How do you have resilience to keep pushing and keep at your passions and your dreams while still trying to manage life in general?
It's because I have this burning desire to do all these things, Alicia. A young woman came by today. I'm also a notary, and so I notarized her paperwork, and I told her about the radio station tonight. She said, "You stay busy." And I feel it's because, Alicia, I started late on this writing journey that I have so much that I want to write about and so much that I want to do, and that keeps me moving. And even there are times when, like I said, my diabetes, thank God, is managed. But at one time when I discovered I had diabetes, I was very sick. In fact, I was hospitalized for 4 days before I knew I had it. And during the whole time that I was there, the nurses and doctors said, "You're lucky that you're not in a diabetic coma or worse." And I said to myself, "Dear Lord, if I get out of this in one piece, I'm going to learn how to control this, because I've got so much I still want to do." And one of the ways that actually helped me, too, is writing about some of these illnesses. I guess it takes away the glare of it. In Random Notes, I think I mentioned there's times when I've had to be at the hospital with my husband, and because we don't have children and we have no family in Atlanta, that I'm usually sitting in the waiting room alone, and how fearful that is. Well, I want to share that with other people who may be going through that, and maybe make them feel like they're not alone.
Right. And I know one of the things I thought was so endearing, as I always said, when you read your books, it makes you laugh. I mean, I don't even know how in Gilded Pearls, this is supposed to be random tips and notes. You've got recipes, and you manage to make people laugh in a book like that. A book that's talking about repurposing. You manage to make them laugh in that. So I don't know how you do it. All I know is, especially in a world where we're pressed for time and we're stressed out and this is going on, we have issues, it's like your books are just that breath of fresh air. But at the same time, your gift of comedic humor, you're able to capture people's attention on some serious things. I know one thing you talked about was the interesting dynamic between the relationships between mother and daughter, and how some women were, how they felt it was you and a friend, and the different experiences you gave where, with one, it was like they could never please their mother. And, it's so shameful to some people to have those type of conversations. But, there's some of the things you write in your books, people can read and go, "Oh, my God, I thought that was just me." Because, we're always in the land of it's just me.
in the Venus Chronicles, there's a piece I wrote that it's called "Sometimes I Feel Like a Mother's Child," and I talk about the very relationships that women have, especially women who have overcritical parents. That a lot of times when your parents and your mother or whoever raised you is overcritically, it hurts you in a way because you're fearful. You stumble. The more you stumble, the more you stumble. And when I wrote that piece, I was talking probably about myself, and because I didn't have the relationship I really have loved. My mother was a wonderful woman. I learned a lot for her, but she wasn't one of those touchy-feely people. You know, if you fell and skinned your knee, and she'll put some stuff on and say, you shouldn't have been running around in the first place, you know.
We know those type of mothers.
Yeah, and when I wrote that piece, Sometimes I Feel Like a Mother's Child, a fan came up to me and she said, she said, my daughter came up to me after she read the book. And my books are marketed from women ages 18 to up to my little friend who's 92 years young. So there are no profanity, no cuss words, just good lessons to be learned and laughter. And she said her daughter, who was a teen at that time, said, Mama, sometimes you make me feel like that. And I thought that was really powerful that she would tell her mom that. And then I guess her mother, who was a friend of mine for many years, said, I didn't know, it made her kind of pull up, didn't realize that the way she acted had that effect on her daughter.
Wow.
And whether it changed their dynamics, I don't know. But I think it was nothing else. It was an eye-opener.
Right. And that's awesome because it starts that dialogue. And sometimes, that's one of the other things your book addresses is that, sometimes we simply hold on to it and we don't share it. So sometimes it could be reading it and laughing, but something else comes up where it's that moment you have the opportunity to really share how you feel.
Mhm. And sometimes
that right there is awesome.
And sometimes that's the only time that you can bring up some of those situations, Right.
So I love to hear where you said the teenager was able to take that and say something because we definitely need more of that. So one more thing before I go into your books, because I definitely want people to know about the different books you've written. How did you land contribution? And we all know the famous Chicken Soup series. But how were you able to land a contribution in this Chicken Soup edition for military families?
Well, this Funds for Writers site that I tell you that has this wonderful information every week. She mentioned for those who wanted to write to focus on the Chicken Soup series. And so that particular newsletter, I don't know, it's probably because this Chicken Soup I think was last year's Chicken Soup, military families. I went on the Chicken Soup site, and if you go on the site, there's a whole list of opportunities to write. And as I scanned down the list, I saw this one called Chicken Soup. It's a whole volume, lots of military and civilian people married to military people wrote their stories. And so I scrolled down the different opportunities, one called Chicken Soup for the cat family, a Chicken Soup for your dog. And there's a whole list of stories that you can write in the Chicken Soup series. Well, I saw this one called Military Families, and I said, maybe I'll share some of my military experience. And so I, read what they needed to do. It's 1,200 words. And, of course, if they choose your piece, you published in a particular volume, and you get 10 copies that you can gift to people or you can sell them. I think they're like $10 a copy. I ended up giving several copies to former military friends as gifts. I thought they would love that. And I have a few that probably when I do a book signing, I'll have a few out. But that's what I did. I sat down, and Chicken Soup is actually a story. It's not an essay. And so you had a lot of, quotes and stuff like that. And so I wrote an aspect of what it was like. When I went into the military, I had never ridden a plane before. It was the first time I'd ever ridden in a plane. And in fact, I filled out the card and put it in the mail and forgot about it until the recruiter called me. And then before I knew it, I'd taken the physical, and I was en route to military basic training. And I remember getting off the plane where this military training officer met us at the train. The first thing he told the guys who were smoking, put them cigarettes out and form in line. And I said to myself, oh, Carol, you've done some stupid things in your life, but boy, this is stupid. And I tell
it was no
people,
turning back.
There was no turning back, and I was like stuck. And I tell people I went into the service because my mother said I would not make it because I was too headstrong and wanted to do what I wanted to do and didn't like to be told what to do. So I tell people I survived the first 4 years because I couldn't go home because she would tell me I told you so.
Well, you know, there goes that good parenting, you know. She meant it one way and it went another way. And I'll just give another juicy tidbit. I'll just give another juicy tidbit for listeners. You've got to get random notes. She's going to tell you a minute about all her books, but you got to get random notes because it made me laugh when you said your mother, because I remember the tale of that god-awful Easter Day hat with the Easter Day ensemble. And not only that, folks, but there's also a very interesting tale about false eyelashes, James Brown, and a suspected spider in the dance floor. And if you listened earlier about the killer scarf, if you thought that was funny, the false eyelashes, James Brown, and the dance floor. And by the way, all of this was on a blind date, so you have got to get the Venus Chronicles series, what we call the girlfriends books, and they are, because the minute you read them, you're going to get on the phone with your best girlfriends and say, you will not believe what I just read. And you'll start reading the different stories. You'll laugh. So, start your own book clubs with this. Carol will come out to your book clubs. So we're going to make sure we give you all her contact information. So at this time, what I want you to do, Author Carol G, is talk to people about the books you've written thus far and where they can get them.
Well, my first debut book was, of course, I mentioned the Venus Chronicles, which is sort of a spoof on Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. All the books except for Gilded Pearls, one of my most recent books, are essay-driven. So you can read a little or a lot. I write them for busy women because I am a busy woman. And a lot of times the first thing I hear people say is, I don't have time to read. Well, you'll have time to, say you need a lift, and you had a rough day at work, and you just need something to make you laugh. So you can pick up random notes or the Venus Chronicles, and there might be some leftover copies of Diary of a Fly Girl Wannabe somewhere. But all 4 books can be found wherever books are sold online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble online, and various places. And as I mentioned, Venus, Diary, and Random Notes are all part of the Girlfriend series. And it's because women coined that. It's because those are things that they think that I talk about that women might talk to their girlfriends about. For example, I sold one of my Random Notes this weekend at a yard sale. I gave the woman the non-Amazon price, and she was leafing through it, and she came across this piece I wrote called Unfriendly Panties. And we women know we have had some of them that started out as briefs, and by the end of the day, they became thongs because we were in denial that we were not still wearing those size 2. And she leafed through it. She said, Unfriendly Panties, I'm going to read this. I think I'm going to enjoy this book. And I said, I think you will.
Yes, and only you could do that. And, in the book, I'm not going to give it away, but in the book, it's hilarious because you read it, and the incidents that happened to her, you would never believe this actually happened to a person.
True story.
But then on top of that, they are all true. That's the thing that's really funny. But the places that they happen, it's like they happen at the worst possible places and times. So it's almost like a movie that's scripted, but you're well aware. She didn't make this up. It really happens, and it's hilarious.
I tell people it's a wonder I'm not in therapy to this day.
Yes, yes. And the funny thing, didn't you have a stint in mental health?
Yes, I did. For when I received my master's degree, both of my degrees, courtesy of Uncle Sam. I used the GI Bill, so that meant no student loans when I finished my master's program.
Yes.
My counselor at the master's program invited me to come out to the mental health clinic where he was a director. And then I said, "You sure you want me to come out? I don't want to hurt people who might have some issues." He said, "No, you're going to be fine. You're very sensitive to people's issues and stuff." So I did. For about 2 years, I saw some clients and some young people under the auspices of a licensed counselor. And I thought that was going to be my life's work, but then my military husband received orders overseas. And so we went to Panama for 3 years. And it was while I was in Panama that I got an adjunct professor job at a school that was on Panama on the Air Force Base, and that's when my love of education kind of materialized. But I liken my stories in my book as therapy without the couch, because I think that sometimes once you read one of my pieces and laugh, you feel good. Women frequently will contact me to buy a signed copy to send to a friend who's going through something, a divorce, a separation, or an illness. They hope that my books will, make them feel better, at least for a short time. And I really love that my books hopefully can do that.
Wow. And that's awesome. So what's next?
I am working on another girlfriend book. I think I mentioned the other day that I'm constantly writing, and I write things that move me or things that happen to me. Not long ago, my husband decided he wanted a honey-baked ham. So we went to the honey-baked ham place, and he sat in the car. Normally he goes in there, but this time I said, let me go in there. So as I went in to get my little ham, and as I was getting ready to go, there was a policeman at the door inside the honey-baked ham place. And so I said, "Are you the ham police?" He said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." And then I got to think of it, and those of you who bought honey-baked hams, you know how expensive they are. And so I could see maybe somebody taking a ham and running out without paying. So I said, okay, I came back and wrote a little piece about the ham police. And so I'm working on a new girlfriend-type book. I think my series will probably continue because I'll probably never not have things to write about because I write about things that happen to me daily. My husband, as I mentioned, is going through a new health crisis, but we're going to get through it the same way we've gotten through all the others. But I think there might be a lesson and even some humor in some of the treatment that he's going through. And I'm hoping that what we go through may be able to help somebody else going through it.
Yes. And how can our listeners keep in contact with you?
They can write me at VenusChronicles@AOL.com. Check on my site, www.venuschronicles.net, N-E-T, venuschronicles.net. Go on the site, read some of the little pieces. I'm constantly kind of updating some of the little stories and things that resonate with me. And they'll see how to write me, and if I can be of some help or share some insights, I'm happy to do that. I have been lucky to have a lot of people on this journey called writing, and I love paying it forward.
Awesome. And I didn't give you the time to also talk about Feast for Words, LLC.
Yes. Feast for Words is basically the bulk of my company, Feast for Words, is highlighting my writings. It's promoting, monetizing my freelance pieces, marketing my books. But from time to time, I do accept a project that resonates with me. I'm very fortunate that I have income from my prior jobs. So since this is my passion, I only want to do projects that resonate with me, like the one I did for the general on his Haiti thing. One of the things I also specialize is turning military information into resumes. When both my husband and I left the military, when the military you don't need resumes to go to different jobs and different stations. But when my husband retired finally and got his first civilian job, I updated I made a resume for him. I also did mock interviews, and he went on the job, and this first job that he ever applied for, they had a 3-hour interview. They liked him. They called him back for a second one, and he got it. And I used some of the typical interview questions. When he came home, I asked him, I said, did they ask you some of the questions? He said, honey, they practically asked me every question. You did. So he felt comfortable.
Gracious.
Yeah, so I specialize in trying to turn military people's stuff into a civilian resume. So that's part of my passion.
Oh, that's awesome. Because definitely that is something that help is needed in. Mm-hmm. So we have so enjoyed having you on this episode of the Entrepreneurs Lounge. I have
enjoyed it myself.
Yes, it has been a stress reliever. It has been funny as always. And again, listeners, please follow her at VenusChronicles.net. Author Carol G. G is spelled G-E-E, and you can look up the series of her books. There you go. So you can look up the series of her various books and get the laugh and joke yourself. And also, if you're going on the Entrepreneurs Lounge radio show page on Facebook, we will soon have that link posted as well. You can follow us on our Twitter account, and that way you can see some of the sayings she said. And, of course, if you go to the entrepreneurslounge.info, you'll be able to get the link to the show to actually listen to the replay. And at this time, I want to ask you, Carol, are there any closing words you want to leave to our listeners?
Well, I wanted to mention one thing. When we talked about my marketing of my books, I have been blessed to do a lot of, like I said, the military promoted lots of out-of-the-box thinking. So when I promoted my books, because they are female-driven books, I did a lot of out-of-the-box things. For example, the Venus Chronicles, a svelte 101-page book. So when it came out in December, I used it, highly marketed as stocking stuffers for women. So women are buying that book hand over fist for stocking stuffers for girlfriends. During the holidays, I took advantage by making Valentine's and Mother's Day gift baskets. I put a book in one of the baskets. I added some spa stuff, a wine glass, and either a small bottle of wine or sparkling cider. I love bubble baths. That's one of the ways I relax. And I pictured women sipping in their wine in their bubble bath and reading maybe Unfriendly Panties and dying. But I wanted to say that when it comes to marketing books, thinking out of the box is an interesting way to promote their books. And while these things that I did were for women's books, I believe any author can do some kind of thing. My thinking is, for example, if somebody wrote a novel, perhaps at a book gathering, they could dress up like the main character. Or if the main character is known for something like smoking like a chimney, you might carry a package of their favorite cigarettes and put it on the table while you're presenting. Anything that keeps your book top of the mind. So don't rule out of the box kind of things, because that will better bring your books to life.
I love that. Because what some people don't realize, and it's a common misconception, is that even in the traditional publishing industry, publishers really help you with everything to publish your book. There's very few publishing companies, even traditional, who do a lot of the marketing efforts. So, and trust me, if you find them, you're paying out the yin-yang. And I would still advise you that you still need to take your own innovation to make yourself personal and to garner that attention of your potential reader. So a lot of the things you said, we gave the statistic at the beginning of the show. The average author only sells a few hundred books in their lifetime. So what you just shared, holidays coming up, or knowing what your style of book is and your readers that listen, how they can receive your book, but you can package it in a different way. Because definitely with the Girlfriends series, yeah, there are a lot of chicks that probably would love to have a bottle of wine. You might have some chocolates or something in there. And this is a gift basket. So it's like my relaxation to myself, sort of like my little, the way we go to the spa or get a massage. This is like a treat that I can open up for myself. So, those are some great ideas. Great ideas. Well, guys, you've heard it here. Make sure you go to VenusChronicles.net. Make sure you listen to the replay if you didn't join us from the beginning, and make sure that you actually implement some of these ideas, and then go back to the entrepreneurslounge.info. Tell us about it. Reach out to us and tell us how some of these strategies that author Carol G shared really, you're using them and they're making an impact. But I definitely want to thank you for being on the show tonight and all the juicy nuggets you gave our authors to really help them from struggling with those book sales and really learning how to monetize their platform and their brands.
Well, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed myself.
Well, we're glad to hear that. And I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm going to tell the listeners, you will hear from author Carol G again real soon. I won't tell you how, but you're going to hear from the. I always love my little cliffhangers and innuendos, and people hate when I do that, which makes me laugh. But you're going to hear from her soon in the near future. I just won't tell you how. But, again, author Carol G., it has been a wonderful time having you, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much, and thank you again to the listeners that are out there. And I wish you all who are writers best of luck. Thank you again, Alicia.
Yes. No, thank you, Carol.
Okay.
And listeners, there you have it. This wraps this episode of the Entrepreneurs Lounge. I alluded to it a little bit, but I just have a few more things to share with you. Of course, we air every first and third Thursday of the month, but it just so happens for the month of July that the first Thursday is July 4th. So we are not going to air that night. So join us in the month of July for the second Thursday and third Thursday of the month at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that second Thursday is July 11th. And I'm full of surprises, but I'll go ahead and tell you who's going to be on the show. We are keeping with this theme of how to really help you monetize your brand. And there is one person that I love him because he's just so different. And I think, as an entrepreneur, I resonate with him because when we talk about thinking out the box, that's who he is. He's the guy that would come to an event with the highest echelon people, and everyone's wearing a suit, and he comes in a black shirt and jeans, and he does it on purpose. So it sort of gives me vindication for my sneakers thing, but we're not going to get into that. We're going to have on July 11th on Thursday none other than the writer of the book Anomaly, How to Finally Stand Out from the Crowd, Mr. Zach Miller himself. Now, if you don't know Zach Miller, he actually started his first business at the age of 10. Since then, he has spent decades and he's not really that old. I think he's just turning 35. He has spent decades helping other people successfully start, grow, and dominate their business through his company called Hatch. Zach has used the skills that he details in his book Anomaly, How to Finally Stand Out from the Crowd, to land an interview with Damon John himself. Yeah, that's the guy from Shark Tank. Also for him to be chosen as the host of a business TV show on ABC, talk business at the White House, get featured in Entrepreneur magazine, wow the audience at TEDx, and raise money from the team that started the Weather Channel. Now, he also has his own podcast called Zach Miller Says, and it's actually Zach spelled with a K and not an H. Also, one of the things I love about his book Anomaly, and actually I'll be seeing Zach tomorrow, is that what he does is show you very detailed and very simplistically how you can stand out from the millions of other individuals in business. And you actually can do this with proven low-cost and no-cost solutions, easy to implement methods for marketing business owners and marketing professionals to turn their heads, and actually business owners in general, not marketing business owners, how you can be memorable and how you can actually be The Anomaly. And he actually addresses both online and in-person strategies that will cost less than the book itself. So we are so excited to have him on Thursday, July 11th. That information will be out to you shortly. And as always, you can follow us at the entrepreneurslounge.info. And you know what? We have enjoyed having you this evening. I look forward to speaking with you further. And I did say I was going to have one more cliffhanger, and that is that pretty shortly you will see the look of the Entrepreneurs Lounge change. You know, as the creator of this show, I do want to give you the feature experts. I do want to expose those myths that you have about entrepreneurship. I want to help you with some of those areas that you're struggling with so you can grow your business and do what you love. And one of the things that I've enjoyed in the various platforms of radio and 10 years I've had there is when we have other co-hosts. Enjoy that. I love having our featured guests. I love being the one that drives the ship and being the host. But, you know, it was always a vision of mine to open up this platform for other entrepreneurs who want to use podcasting to grow their business. So we're doing that. And so continue to follow the website, continue to follow our Facebook page, continue to follow all of our social media accounts, because very shortly you're going to see new advertisements. We're kicking off new shows, new guests, and I'll just give you this cliffhanger. The person you know and the person you hear every first and third Thursday of the month, you will see some of the other sides of my personality, especially with one of the shows I will have the pleasure of often co-hosting along with that host. So stay tuned. We love having you, and just look forward to the things that we have coming up. Stay tuned. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Entrepreneur's Lounge, where we expose the myths of entrepreneurship and release the weight of it all. Real people, real issues, and real talk with expert solutions. Make sure you stay tuned to our Facebook page and thejoyguru.net for show updates, announcements, and to learn how you can be a guest on our show.